Now this is my 3D printer. Now you may be thinking, why would a quilter need or even want a 3D printer? Now I thought exactly the same thing when Bambu Lab approached us to review the machine, and initially we declined the offer because we thought it just didn't suit this channel. So what made us change our mind? Well, it was when we found out that you can 3D print all sorts of tools and gadgets for sewing, quilting, knitting, crochet, paper crafts, the home and garden, and so much more. So here's just one example of what you can do. Now this is my IKEA pegboard, and this is what it looks like now after playing with the 3D printer. Each of the containers, hooks and holders on this board were made with the 3D printer, and best of all of the files were free to download from MakerWorld. That's the Bambu Lab resource site. It's worth taking a look, believe me. I will put a link in the description field below. I also made a tray for holding my sewing machine feet. Now this was originally designed for Husqvarna feet, but it worked quite well for my extra generic sewing feet, and the tray fits nicely in the drawer of my sewing desk. And I also printed this tray for my Juki feet, and as you can see, these fit perfectly into the recessed spaces, and each container has the name of the foot printed on it in a contrasting colour. And this makes it really easy to see which foot is which at a glance, and you can choose the colour that you would like the name to be printed in the software. And if you do a lot of knitting and you have loose needles laying around and you're not sure what size they are, you can print out a knitting needle gauge or a knitting needle counter and even some knitting needle markers. There is so much that you can do with this machine, and I'll show you more of what I've made as we go through this video. Now bear in mind that we'd never used one of these 3D printers before, so we were totally new at this, but the Bambu Lab A1 Mini has been made with us newbies in mind, and it's one of the easiest 3D printers to set up and get started with. It comes out of the box already assembled, so you only need to remove the packaging, some cable ties, and a clip on the side, which is only there to keep everything in place during shipping. And the manual is really easy to follow. It takes you through the steps of setting it all up. You just need to tighten a few screws, add the purge wiper, and attach the spool holder, which holds the spool of filament used for printing. You can get this filament in all sorts of colours and textures, but for starting out they recommend going with PLA, which is what we mostly used in this video. Now we just needed to add the working plate. Now this is magnetised so it fits nice and secure to the bed of the machine. And that's it. So it's super easy to get started with this machine. Now the machine, as you see it here, costs only $199 US, which is an absolute bargain. There's also a combo version that includes the AMS Lite, which holds 4 spools of filament. Now this allows you to print in multiple colours without changing spools, which we'll be showing you in a moment. Now the combo version at the time of filming is only $349 US. Once everything is set up, we just need to turn on the machine and follow the on-screen steps to set up the Wi-Fi connection and then calibrate the machine. Now this is super easy. The on-screen display walks you through step by step. Bambu Lab have thought of everything with the beginner in mind. So let's print something, and since there are some inbuilt files on the machine itself, we thought we'd start there. And we went with what is apparently the first thing you should print when starting out, and it's called a benchy. And you start with this because it helps to test the machine to see if it's doing what it needs to do and to make sure that everything is working properly. This was super easy to do. Just make the selections on the screen and hit print. It then runs through a startup process where it heats the bed and makes sure everything is level and working properly. Now the machine loads the filament and poops out some excess. Now this is a common term used for the excess, so I'm not being rude here. And then it begins printing. Oh, this is so amazing to watch. You can see how it is adding new layers and forming the little benchy. And here is our cute little benchy finished. And when I showed my daughter, she said it would make a great gift for a child, along with one of those little golden books about a tugboat. Now that our first test is done, we're going to get into the quilting and sewing files, and for this we head over to makerworld.com, which is the Bambu Lab files resource, and here is where you can download a ton of 3D files for free. And bear in mind, this is just one of the many sites, including Etsy, that you can go to get 3D files. It's just easier to start with MakerWorld because the files are ready to go for the Bambu Lab 3D printers, and as I've already said, they're available for free. So I've decided to start with something small, and these are quilt block markers. I just need to click on Open in Bambu Studio, and the file automatically loads into the Bambu Studio software, which I downloaded previously. Now the software looks complicated, but it's actually pretty simple for a newbie like me. I just had to select my machine, which is the A1 Mini, the type of nozzle for my machine, and the filament I wanted to use, which is the blue PLA Basic. I also deleted what I didn't want to print, and I moved things around so that everything was closer together. Once I had everything ready, I just clicked on the Preview tab, and you can see here how it displays all the details of the print, including the time taken, the amount of filament used, and the cost. So for all of these letters, it took around 28 minutes to print and cost approximately 18 cents, which is a bargain. So now that I'm ready to print, I just need to click on that Print Plate button, and this gives me a final pop-up just to confirm that everything is okay, and then I click Send. And off it goes. You can see how the machine is drawing the letters and numbers on the plate. I'm using a textured plate. I like this one as it gives a textured design on the base of the project. There are a number of different types of plates available that give a different look to the base of your design. Now you can see how it's building the internal walls that create the structure. It's pretty amazing to watch it being created. And you can see how great these turned out. And there's a hole in the top where you can pop in a pin to attach them to your piles of fabric so you don't mix them up. And you can see here where I've used the letters to keep track of my fabric piles when I'm making the mystery puzzle quilt block. So once we started, we found we couldn't stop. We just kept on creating, and here are some of the things that we've been making. Now this is the zipper by the yard spool. Now we tend to purchase our zippers by the yard and they often get messy and unravel, so this is an ideal way to keep them tidy. Now the holder was made in 3 pieces on the Bambu Lab, and then we screwed them together to form the spool. And we made a small version, but we will be making the larger one for the rest of our zips. And it has this neat little feature where the cap goes on the top of the hole to form a container, and that's where you can store all your zipper pulls, so everything is neatly in the one place. I just love it. And speaking of spools, here's another one we made. Now these are going to be for my ribbon drawer, which can get a bit messy. Now I like the idea of each ribbon being on its own spool, and I'm thinking about storing the spools on a piece of dowel so that I can just unravel the ribbon I want, but that will mean finding something to hang the dowel from, so that's another project to think about. I also printed this flat version, which I absolutely love. Now I've made a few of these because they hold a lot of lace, but they lay flat so they fit nicely in my IKEA Alex drawers. And not only do they keep everything tidy, I can see at a glance what laces I have on hand. Now I mainly use laces in my junk journals. I thought this tape measure holder was pretty neat. I just love how it keeps my tape nice and tidy in the drawer, and it's simply a matter of winding the tape into the holder. Now, when we saw these, we knew we just had to print them for my great-granddaughter and Paula's niece. They will both be turning 3 soon, and these will make a nice little addition to their presents. I also printed out some blunt needles for them to stitch with. It's never too early to start kids on a crafty path. I had a couple of skeins of embroidery floss that had become a tangled mess, so when I saw this, I thought that would be a big help to straighten out the floss. It works really well, although I have it on the edge of a dodgy box so it doesn't fit firmly. I haven't printed out the box to hold the floss as yet, and once I do, the winder will be more secure as it's designed to fit on the side of the box. Now this is a handy guide to help you make sure your hand stitching is evenly spaced. I personally won't have much use for this as I tend not to hand stitch if I can help it, but I thought it would be a handy tool for those of you who do. Now here are some items that aren't quilting and sewing related that I've printed off. Now this is a jar opener. It released the air in the jar, making it easy to remove the lid, and it works a treat. No more struggling to open that jar of pickles. You can hear the pop as the lid releases. I had a bunch of USB cables floating around in my desk drawer that needed tidying up, and these cable ties were perfect for the job. I think I'll be printing off quite a few more of these as I have a lot of cables. Spring has arrived, or so they tell me, although we're still having frosts. However, it's time to start planting seeds and seedlings. Now, I generally make my outdoor labels on my laser, but I thought these labels would be nice for the seedlings in the greenhouse. This is also an example of a multicoloured print, which is so easy with this 3D printer. And having the AMS light, I didn't even have to change the filament myself. The machine did it all. And you can see here that the machine is changing the colour to print the names in white. Okay, so it's time to take a look at the pros and cons of the Bambu Lab A1 Mini. Now, first of all, the pros. This printer is absolutely awesome. I really can't say enough good things about it. It's perfect for beginners, and I can attest to that since I had never used one of these before, so I had no experience whatsoever. But Bambu Lab just made the whole process so easy from start to finish. The machine is quiet, so you won't be disturbing others. In fact, the air purifier is noisier than the 3D printer. Everything about it is amazing, right down to the cute little tune it plays when starting and finishing a project. The A1 3D printer is quite small, so it doesn't take up a lot of room. Now, this is particularly so if you don't have the AMS light. Once you add that, you are essentially doubling the amount of space used, so do keep that in mind. Now, although it looks small and compact, it's really solidly built, but it's not so heavy that you can't move it around by yourself. Whenever we did move it around, we always recalibrated the machine, which is really easy to do. And one thing I really love is that I can leave the machine to do its thing and keep an eye on it via my tablet or iPhone, as it has a built-in camera. We were even able to play a board game and still see what was going on. And now for the cons. There is a slight odour, which is understandable. It's not unpleasant, but I'm a bit thingy about fumes of any sort, so we purchased an air purifier just to filter the air when we're using the machine, especially as it is inside the house in the craft room. The PLA filament is made from fermented plant starch such as corn or sugarcane, so that doesn't sound too bad, but it's still not something that I want to be breathing in if I can help it. Another thing to mention is the filament waste. Now, this is something common to all 3D printers, particularly when you are changing colours, but it was less than we were expecting. For example, this is the amount of waste for the sewing machine feet tray that we printed. The only issue is finding a way to use it in another application or to safely dispose of it. There are lots of ideas out there which we'll explore in more detail as the waste builds up. The built-in camera is a great feature, but it is slow to generate the video. You can see here how it lags. So not too many cons and plenty of pros. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.